Hi, my name is Anna, and today we're going to talk about Dadaism. And for head starters, what is Dadaism? We actually need to have the knowledge for this. And basically, Dadaism is this new current that it's born after the World War One, and as we can see, it's a different type of art than that we were used to, like the art that and all these beautiful paintings that we were seeing, and it's a little bit different than that. Dada or Dadaism, it's called like this because of its nonsense. Like it doesn't mean anything. Dada actually doesn't have a meaning, not in here, not in English, not in Spanish, not in any language. Actually, in French, it actually means horse hobbies. But if you look at it in German, it doesn't have an actually meaning. The word Dada comes from like nonsense, Dada, like nothing else, nothing important, like just data, to give this meaning to the current that it was basically that. It was in the prelude of the World War One, a new movement, and Dada proved to be one of the revolutionary movements for the early 20th century, which allowed people to express themselves. Okay. Okay. So we are going to see the purpose of data. Data was the beginning for many artists to experiment and express beyond the current definition of art. And this was because they were reacting to the capitalism and the war that they just lived. And they were against everything that was in that moment. They were trying to find a new balance, a new kind of peace, a new kind of beautiful art, new meanings of the world that can give a new sense of this world full of disgrace and a lot of suffering. Uh, the effect of data was to create a climate in which art was alive to the moment and not to paralyze traditions. And in data, we can actually see, like in these pictures, that it's very colorful. Sometimes it can be colorful, it cannot be colorful. It doesn't have like a certain rule, a certain type of rules or a way to do it. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be painting. You can also do collage. You can do a lot of things with data. It's involved with arts, with movement, with theater. You can find data in many types of art. And basically, it was the freedom to express themselves in this rage of the war. And these are some of the Dadaism notes. Dada was a form of basically artistic anarchy. They were challenging what they thought it was art, and this was a new type of art, and more fresh type of art. And Dada influenced millions, or maybe more. It influenced a lot of people. And the Dadaist expanded the boundaries and the context of what was considered acceptable for art. Basically, art was kind of rigid, and it was full of rules, and the Dada artists actually comprehend what that art was free. They didn't want to catch the art in a cage, and they wanted to set it free. They wanted to prove that the art was more than boundaries and pretty faces and maybe just a place or a person of maybe a portrait. They wanted to choose some kind of movement that can prove that the art it's more than just that. It has a meaning, it has a feeling beneath of that beautiful art. It has to have a feeling. Okay. So now that we introduce the art of data, we're going to analyze this piece. It's called the Scat Players. This paint was made by Dix, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit later. But at first glance, I want to see the main picture of the painting. This actually it's a painting and a collage. We can see different type of things here if you observe very well. Mainly, these are three soldiers, and they are playing a game. It's called Scat, just like the name of the painter. In this painting, Dix represents the war as a gamble, a scat game between the crippled and the deformed soldiers, and it's expressing the shocking new reality of that time. This is after the war, as we can remember. So there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of damage, many soldiers dead, and many others that actually return home. But this does not mean that they return home safe or without any kind of injury. And this is what it represents. Uh, these are three disfigured soldiers, and they represent the new stereotype in specifically in Weimar, that it's a place in Germany where they belong, and it was full of soldiers that came back from the World War One, and basically they were all pretty bad, in very bad conditions. They were veterans of the war. They had their medals, they had their honor, but at what cost? And after serving for their country, you can see that they're very injured and they have several loss in their body. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. So, at the first glance of this painting, uh, we can actually see that there's many symbols in the painting, such as the prosthetics that were new at the time, um, the lamp that you can see up in the left corner, and the people basically just gambling after this terrible success. So this is the main idea. And the fact that the soldiers had patches and numerous aiding devices sends to the viewer into the era of industrialized war. And this time we can see and appreciate that we have a little bit more of technology to help the soldiers, but it's not enough. So we're going to move to the basics of the painting. Mainly, the scat players it's in Wehrmann, Germany, and the author is Otto Dix. The technique is an oil on canvas, and the art history style obviously is Dada, and the current location now it's Ale National Gallery, Berlin, and it was made in 1920, in the 1920s after the war. And the painting Scat Player's Card Playing Invalids, created by Autolix, shows the effect of the World War One in the people, basically. And summarizing, this is what happened to the soldiers, and the painter uses Dadaism, but also Cubism elements in the college, like way the men are pictured and the geometric shapes used. We can see a little bit of everything. Dada does not um, make you into one single type of art. You can use a variety of art, as we can appreciate here. Okay, so we're going to see again the painting. And this painting shows three disfigured men, as we said. And we're going to talk a little bit more about every single man. The man portrayed on the left has a wooden leg and an arm and one able leg with which he's holding his cards. He's using his hand as well, his leg as a hand. And he also has a hearing tube attached to his ear. It's very patchy, and as you can see, it has tremendous scar in the face. He has no right eye, and he has a permanent grin because the right side of his mouth is missing, so he's always going to look like this. He also has multiple scars on the head, and then we have the man in the middle who has two fake legs that they actually kind of get lost with the table, and no arms, and a metal cup holding his head together, a glass eye, and a prosthetic jaw, nose and throat, and no left ear. He has a card holder in front of him and is playing with his mouth, actually, because he doesn't have any more extremities to play. And lastly, we have the man on the right wearing an iron cross and has no legs and one fake arm. And this actually is very interesting, but because this man is portraying the author of the piece. He used to be an artist, but then he was sent to the war and he had to serve. So this is him now presenting the suffering of the veterans after the war and the issues that came with this. And basically, in the lower jaw, you can see a prosthetic bone called Dix. That it's what give us the comprehensive of that he is Dix and that it's representing him. We can also see the round lamp in the corner, like we mentioned, and it has a little skull. And these have two possible interpretations, but the mainly is that it's the feeling of wanting to die from the veterans. They're no longer useful and they only are suffering. As you can see, they're no longer looking like humans, they're just pieces of the humans that they were used to be. So, like we discussed and analyzed, we have different symbols and interpretation, like the prosthetics, the organic with the mechanical, the wounds, and the lamp, of course. This is a very dark era. As you can see, the colors are not very bright. We see a glance of darkness in the whole painting, and we don't have a lot of light in the whole picture. Only the light bulb that has a very present symbol. And then we have the aesthetic, and it's very raw, it's very disturbed, and it has a lot of emotions, but they are more like heavy emotions. Like it's supposed to make you feel something about what happened in that era and portrayed what happened to those soldiers, to the suffering, to the wounds, to what happened to the country after that. We have to remember that the people used to struggle at that time because there was an economic crisis and they were suffering all the destruction of the war. So this is what basically is the painting. And thank you so much for joining for the presentation.